Welcome back to part 3 of Money Matters for Mustang supporters. This is the part that we talk about financial aid. We're here to help you and support you as a new Mustang student supporter to help your new Mustang student through the financial side of their university education. My name's John. I'm the Solution Support Facilitator for Student Accounts. And let's quickly go over what we've already talked about. That's the valuable resources, the important rule of the road. It's the student account, not the parent account. Don't forget what to pay, when to pay, how to pay. All that stuff is available to you, especially with Share My Information reports and through Money Matters. And we did have some Jerry Maguire inspiration in the last session. Today we're going to talk about financial aid, and session 4 gives you a glossary of special words, and we'll review some of the ones because the financial aid has a lot of their own special words. And we're going to talk a bit about the Mustang Supporter Punch List, which has everything you need to know right now to get everything ready for fall quarter. Quick review of the important rule. It is the student account, not the parent account, not the family account. The student is responsible. It's the student's liability. And when we're talking about financial aid, it is the student's liability, especially on loans. They are student loans with the exception of Parent Plus loans. We'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. Parent Plus loans are not student liabilities, they are parental liabilities. All communication is done through the student, email, and portal, and the financial aid office has a lot of the same rules we do. They only communicate with the student unless the student has authorized the release of their information using the authorized to release link in the Student Center of the Cal Poly portal. Financial aid and student accounts share the same FERPA release. So please make sure your student has set you up with FERPA if you are trying to communicate with the financial aid office. During COVID-19, financial aid does not take phone calls, but they do respond very, very well to emails to financialaid@calpoly.edu. A quick review of when to pay. Dates are posted at sa.calpoly.edu. This is what it looks like. And here I'm going to highlight this section again. You can see that students without financial aid, charges are going to post on August 11th. They're going to be past due on August 26th. It's a pretty quick time window, 2 weeks. It's not unusual, though, for us. We are a quarter school, and that does happen a lot. Class cancellation for students who do not have financial aid, and it only applies if the student has financial aid, then class cancellation is not going to be applicable. In fact, nothing on this line is applicable to a student if they have $1 of financial aid. But class cancellation is on September the 3rd. Students with financial aid, your past due date gets extended. The grace period is extended from the due date, which everybody's going to see in their portal of 8/25 and past due on 8/26, until the day the financial aid disperses. And that is September the 7th, 1 week before classes begin. And we repeat here that it's not subject to class cancellation if you have financial aid. So a little bit more on the when to pay thing. Here's everything we talked about in the last video. Housing and dining can be deferred by financial aid if you have enough to cover all registration, tuition, and other fees. There is a wonderful calculator at sa.calpoly.edu. It's our financial aid calculator, and it walks through, this is how much aid you need to get in order to get a deferral of housing. This is how much aid you need to get in order to get a deferral, not only of registration and other fees, housing, but dining as well. Because the way financial aid posts means that dining is the last one that's paid by financial aid. So let's talk a little bit about how to pay using financial aid. First off, there's a sequence that happens with financial aid, and you need to understand that. Aid is first offered. That's already been done. Should already have been done anyway. Aid offers were put out in May and April, and some in June. Aid has to be accepted in order to be dispersed. That's another word we'll talk about in a moment. Free money obviously is going to be accepted for you, because who would say no to free money? But loans are an obligation, and the financial aid office wants to make sure that the student has actively accepted that obligation. So the Accept Decline Awards link is in the financial aid section of Money Matters. Click on the link and accept any loans that you want to have. Otherwise, you'll never get them, because if you don't accept it and accept that obligation, it'll never happen. Understand financial aid, as reviewed by the Department of Education, is both free money and loans. And there are a lot of different loan types. Students, generally speaking, are offered direct loans. They are both subsidized and unsubsidized. Interest is accruing on all loans from the day they are dispersed. However, the subsidized loan is subsidized by the government so that the interest is paid by the government as long as the student is a student. Interest is accruing, but it's being paid by the government. Unsubsidized loans, obviously the interest is accruing. Now, with direct loans for students, they do not have to have any repayment until after the student is no longer a student. That would be 6 months after they've graduated or left the university and are no longer full-time. Parent Plus loans are a little different. They are an obligation of the parent. The parent must do an application. It is credit-based. If the parent does a Parent Plus application and is declined, then the student is eligible for more direct loans, just so you know. If the Parent Plus loan application is accepted, then the Parent Plus borrower is now on the hook for that money. Parent Plus loans must be paid back starting 3 to 6 months after they have been dispersed. Interest rates are accruing from day one of disbursement. So, review, aid is offered, then it must be accepted. After the aid has been accepted and the loans have been accepted, to-do list items are going to populate in the student's student center in their Cal Poly portal. To-do list items include entrance counseling, a master promissory note. There'll be a master promissory note for a Parent Plus loan, a master promissory note for the student. The entrance counseling only has to be done once by the student at the beginning of their career. They're basically saying, I understand, and being taught, I understand that I am borrowing money, and therefore I must pay it back. Also, things that can pop up later in this process would be some kind of verification. A tax form needs to be verified, or a student needs to submit a dependent verification, or something like that. Those are all posted on the to-do list by the financial aid office. If those to-do list items are not done, aid will not disperse. And eventually, a registration hold will be placed on the account if it goes too far into a quarter and aid has not yet dispersed because the to-do list items have not been handled. And then that word, dispersed. What happens 1 week before classes begin each quarter, generally speaking, and thereafter, is aid is dispersed. So the aid is broken out into 3 quarterly amounts, and that quarterly amount for fall quarter, for example, will disperse on September the 7th. It's sent from the financial aid office over to student accounts, and then student accounts applies that aid. And here's how we apply the aid. It first applies to any balances for that particular quarter in registration and other fees. Now, that would be any balances except for the very few smaller ones that are not financial aid eligible. Things like lost room keys, health center visits, those are not financial aid eligible, will never be paid by financial aid. Whether they've been on there for a long time or a short time, financial aid will never cover them. They must be paid from personal resources using the Make a Payment Now button at the Cal Poly portal. If there's money left over in the financial aid after we've covered the balances for the current quarter, then financial aid applies to the housing balance for that quarter only. If there's enough money left over after the housing balance for that quarter has been covered as well, then the excess aid is applied to the dining balance for that quarter only. And then finally, if anything is left after everything has been paid for that particular quarter, the excess is refunded to the student. That's your quick primer on financial aid. If you have more questions, do contact the financial aid office. They are available by email at financialaid@calpoly.edu. Sorry, I don't have that one up on this particular slide, but it is financialaid@calpoly.edu. They do not do phones due to COVID-19 right now. We are available by phone 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. Our number is 805-756-1428. You call through, you're going to talk to one of my student assistants, or you're going to probably talk with me. That's a wrap on part 3. We're going to get down to the final bits, a quick review of some interesting terms we use, and that wonderful Mustang supporter punch list.